Hey, everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with the miserable liberal and Ron Placone.
I'm miserable.
Howdy, howdy.
So we're going to talk about the defense spending, but in relationship to the Democratic Party, because first of all, we all know this chart, right? That's the United States spends more on defense than the next 8 countries combined. Look at that. We spend $611 billion. The next 8 countries, Germany, Japan, the UK, France, India, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and China, spend less. China's got a couple billion people. They spend less. They spend considerably less. They spend about a third of what we spend. And what could you do? What could you do with those savings? If you only spent half of what we spend or a third, what could you do? I don't know, invest in like bullet trains, infrastructure, free education, healthcare. Look at Russia. Look how little Russia spends on their military. Do you see that? That's right around $60 billion. That's right in that ballpark. They have single-payer healthcare in Russia. Nobody goes bankrupt when they get sick in Russia. Isn't that something? So, and by the way, an analysis by the Strauss Military Reform Project has shown if we count related activities, that's not all the defense spending that there is, $611 billion versus $595 billion for the next 8 countries. That's not all the defense spending there is. According to analysis by the Strauss Military Reform Project, if we count related activities like Homeland Security, Veterans Affairs, nuclear warhead production at the Department of Energy, military aid to other countries, and interest on the military-related national debt, that figure reaches $1 trillion a year that the United States is spending on military. Holy F. And you know what's also fun? And you never hear, there's nobody running for office saying we got to cut military spending. We got to reinvest that money back at home. We're failing like all great empires fail. We're overexpanding militarily. We're an imperialistic power.
Yeah, you'll be smeared as unpatriotic immediately.
Yes.
No matter what party you're affiliated with or whatever.
Right.
I just want to know what the profits are.
The profits are, I'm going to guess, $611 billion. That would be the I don't know. You tell me. You tell me how much money we need to defend ourselves from our enemies. Think Canada's going to invade anytime soon? Or Russia? Think Russia's going to invade us? You think Mexico's going to invade us? Anyway, Russia spends about $60 billion a year roughly on their military. 60.
I think they're up to something in Australia. They seem suspect.
They are suspect. So guess what? I went back to 2008, just as Barack Obama was coming into office, to see what the mood was back then on defense spending. Because that was after 8 years of expansion of illegal wars. That was after 8 years of George, or 7 years of it, George Bush and his Iraq war and his Afghanistan war, which we're still in. Still. It's just something you do if you're a United States president. You just bomb Iraq and you keep sending troops to Afghanistan. That's just what we do. So this is from November 19th, 2008. It's an article by Katrina vanden Heuvel from The Nation. And the headline is, yes, we can cut the defense budget. Why it's time to stop the military spending spree. And it's subtitled, our current military budget is almost equal to all of the rest of the world's defense budgets combined. This is unsustainable. It's sustainable if you don't mind rendering half your population poor. It's sustainable if you don't mind 45,000 of your own citizens dying every year for lack of health care that you're not going to provide. It's sustainable if you cut Medicare and Social Security to pay for the military, which is what Barack Obama tried to do. So when they say this is unsustainable, they mean this is not sustainable if we want to have a great country. We can keep doing it. We're still doing it. So guess who was calling for a cut in defense spending? Last month, this is from that article in 2008, November 2008. Last month, Congressman Barney Frank called for a 25% cut in the defense budget. When was the last time you heard a Democrat do that? When was the last time you heard a Democrat call for a cut in the defense budget? He wanted 25% cut, $150 billion. He said, quote, "We don't need all these fancy new weapons. I think there needs to be additional review." I agree with Barney Frank from 2008. I don't hear Barney Frank saying that now.
Well, you know what? I'm going by memory here because this is a while ago, but I vaguely remember when this happened, and I'm pretty sure he was raked over the coals for it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even at that time, the Democrats were cool with the wars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that wasn't something you
But he
questioned.
was a leading guy, so that's a leading Democrat. That Barney Frank was a leader, and he was certainly, one of the more famous members of the Democratic Party, and he had he had a real platform, and he's coming out saying we need to cut the military budget by 25%. That's what we need. We need people in that stature saying that stuff, even if he's going to get raked over the coals. We need, He goes on, much of the reduction will come from ending the war in Iraq and from cutting unneeded weapon systems. I believe that it's appropriate to reduce defense spending, and this is the goal I wanted to set. A goal of cutting defense spending. That's a great goal? You never hear Democrats say that. In fact, he went on to say, I don't have any specific details at this point, but I will be working with my colleagues to identify weapon systems that we can reduce. So now why doesn't John Oliver do a piece about how he doesn't even know how the Defense Department works? Because, like he did to Jill Stein when she said she wanted to cancel everyone's debt by quantitative easing. She wanted to do it for student debt. Mm-hmm. I remember, you can't, you have to know how it works. He doesn't have, I don't have any idea how to do this. I just agree that it's a good goal. I think we all agree. Just like when John F. Kennedy said we should go to the moon by the end of the decade, he had no idea how to build a rocket. But he had a goal. And that's called leadership. So he goes, and I also want to look at drawing down the number of our overseas bases. We have over 1,000 military installations around the world. We don't know exactly how many. Think about that, 1,000. Think about that. Wow. That's 100 for each state? No, that's more than that. No, that's less. I'm not a math scientist.
No math scientists on this show, actually.
So think about that. They have 1,000. They don't know exactly. It's over 1,000 military, but some people say 800. I've seen where they say 1,000, but no one really knows for sure because a lot of them are secret. So they don't count them. Think about that. God damn it. 1,000 and you think we're safer because of that? Even a senior Pentagon advisory group, the Defense Business Board, recently concluded that the current budget is not sustainable. This is back in 2008 they were saying that. In 2008, the Defense Business Board, a Pentagon advisory group, was saying that their defense spending was not sustainable. It turns out if you're willing to let your country be decimated, we're still spending $611 billion. That's just what they show on the books. I showed you it's over $1 trillion. Yet they still have leaded water in Flint, Michigan, and lots of other places in the country. Isn't that weird? And according to the Boston Globe, Pentagon insiders and defense budget specialists say the Pentagon has been on a largely unchecked spending spree since 2001 that will prove politically difficult to curtail, but nonetheless must be reined in. It wasn't reined in. It was politically difficult to do so. That's why it wasn't reined in. I don't even know if anyone tried to rein it in. I don't think anyone's trying to rein in the defense budget. In fact, they're falling over each other trying to expand it. The Institute for Policy Studies, the IPS, and its Foreign Policy in Focus, FPIF, network of progressive experts also released a report last year, I guess this is 2007, called Just Security, which details how $213 billion could be cut from U.S. military spending. That would pay for everyone's college about 5 times over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you could get half a decade of free college for everybody in the United States just by cutting that from the budget 1 year. Go ahead, Ron.
Well, I'm also curious. I wish there was more transparency on where exactly this budget was going. I mean, when Sam Ronan was on the show, he told us how, if your boots, when you were a soldier, if your boots get ruined, you're paying for those boots out of your own pocket.
Right.
So, the people that are putting their lives in danger, that probably don't want to be there in the first place, but were crushed by an economy that forced them to join up, they're dipping into their own pocket to have the proper attire that they need. Meanwhile, we have this ridiculous budget. Where's all of it going? Where's that money going? Where's that money being spent? And you're going to find what's being spent on, these weapons and on these companies that, politicians have interest in. And
a lot of it's going to the Al Qaeda.
Mm-hmm.
We're training our enemies and terrorists. A lot of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think if people really knew that, if that was
Right.
common consensus, there'd be so much more outrage about this stuff.
There would be outrage about it if anybody in the media was outraged about it. But the people in the media aren't allowed to be outraged about it because they work for giant corporations who don't want them to be outraged about it. She goes on. She says, even with this cut, the United States, even with the over $200 billion cut, the United States would retain the largest military in the world and spend over 8 times more than any of the next largest militaries. In a recent Defense News op-ed, Pemberton and Corbright, quote, the balance between our spending on military forces and other security tools like diplomacy, non-proliferation, foreign aid, and homeland security needs to change, meaning we're spending even the money we're spending on defense, we're spending it in the wrong places. Like instead of more bombs and weapons, we need to spend it on stuff like foreign aid, diplomatic solutions to problems. That's much more effective at keeping our security than to keep creating more terrorists by bombing them. So they say if you cut the spending in the military, you could spend it more wisely on other things. Like, for example, the USB demonstrates that foregoing the scheduled increase in the troubled F-22 fighter jet for fiscal year 2008, that would be $800 million. That money would be sufficient to triple the amount on debt cancellation in the world's poorest countries. So what do you think makes us... So we stabilize other countries, we relieve their debt, we make them less likely to be infiltrated by terrorists, we make them more likely to avoid wars. So that's another way to spend that $800 million. You could spend it doing debt cancellation for the world's poorest countries. Or you could increase by 50% United States contribution to international peacekeeping operations. Or you could triple the amount allocated in fiscal year 2007 for domestic rail and transit security programs. Let's remember that when they built the interstate highway system, that was a defense project. That was so we could move our missiles all around. And that's how it was sold. We all know it was a big boon to our economy. But you couldn't sell it like that. You had to sell it. You had to scare the shit out of people first. Along the same lines, canceling the Bush administration's initiative to build offensive space weapons could provide the $800 million needed to double the originally requested annual budget for the State Department's Office of Reconstruction and Stabilization. They have an office called the Office of Reconstruction and Stabilization. So we could invest in that, or we could buy weapons to put in outer space. So do you see? So this is back in 2008. Katrina Vanden Heuvel was pointing out the unbelievable need to cut the military budget and how much better that money could be spent, and that it's unsustainable. little bit more. The report offers $56 billion in cuts to spending on offensive weapons and $50 billion in new expenditures on defense and prevention. According to the report, quote, this budget would emphasize working with international partners to resolve conflicts and tackle looming human security problems like climate change, preventing the spread of nuclear materials by means other than regime change, and addressing the root cause of terrorism while protecting the homeland against it. So we could use our money, instead of building bombs to drop on poor people in desperate situations, we could spend that money to fight climate change, which, by the way, is going to cause a lot more military conflicts.
But Jimmy, why fight climate change when we could build a real Death Star?
Ah!
We need space weapons.
Ron's right. Oh, could I add a couple of
Yes.
facts, Jimmy? I was just looking up while you're covering the story, and I just did a search, and I came up to Business Insider, and they said in 2007 the amount of money labeled waste or lost in Iraq was $11 billion and could have paid 220,000 teachers' salaries. Another fact that they provided was the yearly cost of stationing one soldier in Iraq could feed 60 American families. For 1 year of a soldier, 60 American families. It also said in 2008, the Pentagon spent more money every 5 seconds in Iraq than the average American earned in a year.
Hey, everybody, the next live Jimmy Dore show is August 16th. That's a Wednesday, new time, 9 p.m. 9 p.m. show, 9 p.m. show, August 16th in Burbank, California. Get your tickets right there or at jimmydorecomedy.com.